Hey guys, it's coming my review for the latest new limited series from Mike Flanagan on Netflix, of course being Midnight Mass. And this one we do center on the world of Crockett Island. It is basically this seemingly unchanging island that has been practicing the same rituals for years. Everyone there is like very devout Christians and things like that. They're very much structuring their life around Christianity, but more specifically we center around this character of Riley, someone who has been in prison for about 4 years. He's become this social pariah of sorts because of it, because of this murder that he committed, so everyone kind of looks at him differently. And when he returns, this also meets the arrival of this strange new priest that comes to town in Father Paul, who after all these years is replacing the main sort of reverend, within their commune. And when he arrives, all of these weird miracles start to happen. But as the show goes on, you start to realize there might be a bit of an underlying darkness that may cause a lot of people to really question their faith overall. So Midnight Mass, I was obviously hyped for this show. Look, every single time Mike Flanagan puts out anything, I get really excited for it. I think he's truly one of the real horror masters working today, but especially when it comes to these Netflix miniseries. I mean, I have just been loving every single one of them, even though there's only been two. Haunting of Hill House is one of my favorite horror things ever now. It's a show that I'm always recommending to people when they need some kind of horror limited series to watch. And then Bly Manor, I honestly think was a really great follow-up. No, it wasn't exactly a horror series, but it was a really great gothic romance, and it showed that he is willing to do something different. He's not always going to do the same thing, and that's why I was actually very excited for this show, because one, it wasn't a part of the Haunting series, it was something else entirely. Two, it seemed like a very different work from what he's really tackled in the past, so I was very excited to see what he was really going to do here. And just the fact we had another Mike Flanagan thing coming out, anything that is under his arsenal has me very hyped. Look, like I said, I was already very excited for this show going into it, but after watching it, oh my god, I mean, this show blew me away in more ways than I really ever could have imagined. This is easily one of the most ambitious and one of the most daring projects I've seen any horror filmmaker really tackle. And I know I just gushed about Haunting of Hill House, but this honestly comes pretty close to that. This is one of the best things he has ever created, and also happens to be, I think, the best thing I have seen on TV so far this year. I was absolutely blown away by this show, but we are just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And look, I've said this so many times before, but that is something that Mike Flanagan is always dead on with when it comes to when it comes to casting. I think he always does such an amazing job in finding the best possible actors to play these roles, but also ushering in new talent that we haven't seen before. He really does achieve both ends of the spectrum here. But I first really want to talk about Zach Gilford, who is essentially our main character, Riley Flynn, and really plays this character perfectly, I think. He gives this character the right amount of sort of subdued acting that he really does require. Riley, obviously, is someone that has a lot of hidden demons. Throughout these past 4 years, he's gone through a lot, and so you really do kind of see that all sort of just slowly, gradually come out as the show goes on. But also, he's perfectly stoic. He's also very, he's very heroic in that way. And overall, is someone that you really do find yourself rooting for. I think that he did a really great job here. Like I said, there's a lot of inner demons and just a lot of things that he's going through, and I think he balanced all of that very well here. It's not necessarily the most showy performance. It's a lot more subdued. This is not a character that gets angry a lot. He likes to repress a lot of his emotions, but you do very much see him sort of open up more as the show goes on, and I think the more he went on, the better he really did become, and I really did love what Gilford ended up doing. I think he did an amazing job here. And Kate Siegel, once again, is also really great here. She has a much bigger role, obviously, this time around, whereas Bly Manor, she was only in one episode. And I think she works very well as kind of the heart and soul of this series. I think she does a really good job at playing this character, Erin. Easily the most good-natured character of the entire show, but someone who things just don't seem to be going her way. You know, everything she does, it seems to go in a negative light, and she's trying to sort of, focus on the positive. She thinks that this baby that's on the way for her is going to be her way to sort of, rid herself of that, sort of move forward. And I really enjoyed, her performance in this show. I think her and Zach Gilford have some really strong chemistry. These two were each other's high school sweethearts, and we kind of do dive deeper into that as the show goes on, and I thought they both did a really strong job there and anchor the show quite nicely. But I have to say, as good as those two performances are, it really are the supporting players this time around that absolutely make this entire show. Especially when it comes to Hamish Linklater, who, holy shit, I mean, I have seen him in a couple projects before, but I was not expecting him to give the masterful performance that he gives here. And I will say right now, I can't really talk about what makes this role work so well, but I will say Father Paul is a very mysterious character. A lot of his character, he's shrouded in mystery, but also a lot of moral ambiguity. You don't really know where his head is at a lot of the time. Why is he doing the things that he's doing? And Linklater pulls it all off to a T. You get the sense this is a guy that is very good-natured, and he is really trying to, you're conflicted throughout the show. You're not sure if he is this good-natured priest that is just very devoted to his cause, or if he has a more sinister intent. And I think either way you look at it, Linklater's performance is just absolutely incredible here. Every single beat he handles, he has a lot of juicy monologues throughout the show, and every single one of them, you are so riveted to the screen with every single thing that he is doing. He really just kind of chews up all of the scenery, and I loved every single second of what he ended up doing here. Like I said, I think it was a very hard role to pull off, but gratefully, Linklater absolutely, put all his cards on the table, and I think gave one of the most powerful performances I have seen all year. I absolutely adored what he did here. I know a lot of these shows, they haven't really been nominated for anything, but Linklater's performance is begging for Emmy attention. I mean, if he doesn't get nominated, I don't know what's wrong with the fucking Emmys. I really don't know, because his performance deserves all the possible love that it can get. It is one of the best performances I've seen in quite some time, and I really loved what he ended up doing here. But the other real big standout of this show for me is someone that I really haven't seen at all before in Samantha Sloyan, who plays this character, Bev Keane, who, let me just say, is one of the nastiest and most infuriating characters you will watch all year. I mean, this is a character that is so vile. Every single thing that she does, you just can't stand her. But man, does Sloyan do such a great job at making you hate this character, and also getting us to see things through her worldview. The way this character constantly rationalizes all of these terrible things that she's doing, it is just so gross to watch, but Sloyan really, I think, channels that very well. You understand, the evil nature of this character, and I really loved everything that she's doing, especially her calmness in the show. This is not a character that is very reactive. She's actually very pleasant and welcoming, and that's what makes her so scary. That's what makes you really dislike this character. She really sinks her teeth into this role, and I think gives one of the most unsettling performances that I've seen in a while, and I really love what she ended up doing here. She absolutely killed it here. But also a big standout this time around for me was Rahul Kohli, who plays Sheriff Hazan. I loved him in Bly Manor, but he has a lot more to work with this time around. He's probably the character that is the most conflicted over what's going on. I'll get a little bit more into that when we get into the writing, but I really loved what he ended up doing here. He's got a lot of really great monologues, and I think he really does kill it here. The rest of the cast, I mean, everyone really does such an amazing job. I really don't think there is a weak link throughout this entire show, whether it's Annabeth Gish, who plays Dr. Sarah Gunning, does an amazing job in playing that role. Alex Essoe has a very challenging role here, and I think she really does kill it. Michael Truco is really great. Henry Thomas is always great here, and he has a little bit more this time than he did in Bly Manor, and I think he plays a really really strong role in the show, as well as Kristin Lehman. I really enjoyed both of them here. And of course, I mean, Flanagan always, I don't know what it is, but he finds like the best child actors when it comes to horror, and that is no exception here, especially when it comes to Annarah Cymone, who plays this character Lisa. I've never seen her before, but I really hope we do again, because I really loved what she ended up doing here. I think that she as well gave a very strong performance, as did everyone in the show. I don't think anyone here missed a beat. I think everyone really played these roles to perfection, and I was very impressed by the entire ensemble here. You can always count on Flanagan to deliver in that department, but man, the show really does underscore just how magnificent he is in casting everyone. He really just gets every single one right. He really finds a way to let everyone, stand out to their true potential, and I was just really impressed by the entire cast here. But now we need to get into the directing and the writing, which, I mean, this is really what I think makes this show as powerful as it is. Something to know going into this, and I honestly think is, the truest statement that could have been made, is that Mike Flanagan said making this show was actually the most personal project for him, because the whole show is really supposed to be like a meditation on faith, a meditation on kind of struggling, to find where you fit into everything. And that's kind of about him, kind of having this crisis of faith of sorts. And I think that's translated very well here, because not only is there so much passion, as there usually is, but I think even more so here put into this than any other thing that's come before it. But you really do see just how he really does dive deeper into the horror aspects of this show. But what really impresses me, I think, is, again, he has this near perfect balance with this emotional material where he really does take the time, as he usually does, but here especially, I mean, you really feel those emotions pour out throughout the show. This is a very heavy watch in many points, and again, it's like a lot of Flanagan projects, it's very hard to like teeter around spoilers here. I'm honestly like chomping at the bit, like wanting to talk about what happens, but I'm gonna wait just a little bit to do that, because I want to talk about, stuff without getting super heavy into spoilers. But it's a very heavy and dense show, and he does a really good job, I think, of balancing that, but he also dives a lot more into the horror aspects here. I mean, this is easily the most twisted show he has made yet. There's so many directions this show goes into that you really would never think about, and then when you see him play out, it's like, oh my god, that's kind of genius. And when you realize what he was really trying to go for there, I thought was just absolutely incredible. And so many horror directors aren't able to get this right. They want to do one or the other. Flanagan is able to do both. He draws these big emotions out of these characters, really making you connect to them, but then also makes you equally just as terrified in the same episode, and he just does such an amazing job with that. And I really loved what he ended up doing, and I think you really do feel that personal side really come through here. This feels like everything that his like filmography has been leading up to. It's like the project he's always wanted to make, but has never really had the right time to do it. He's never had that right moment, and now he finally does. And it very much seems like he, it's very much paid off in that way. I'm very happy that he did, in fact, go ahead and make this project. So it's a very ambitious one. It's not one that a lot of people would be willing to make, but it really shows just how much he has grown as a director, and I really loved what he ended up doing here. Like I said, this show had me equally crying, but also terrified in the same second, and I absolutely adored what he ended up doing here. But the writing of the show as well is just absolutely superb. I mean, something about Flanagan, I really don't know how to explain it, but the way he is able to make you so riveted over these like 5-minute monologues that these characters have. I mean, just so few directors can pull that off. Any other director pulls it off, it's usually really boring, but whenever Flanagan does it, I am just so glued to the screen. Some of the best moments of this entire show are just watching characters have these monologues and talking about things that have traumatized them, and this works really well because of the fact that he really does take the time to get you to know every single character. What is their story? Why are they still on Crockett Island? Why is this their purpose? Why are they so devoted to the church? Why are they not as devoted to the church? Why do they feel skeptical about Father Paul? Why are they loving Father Paul? What has their past been like? What's their future like? All of this stuff. He really wants to take the time to get you to soak in all of those details. So when stuff eventually does go down, which I'm gonna tell you right now, it takes a while. It does take a while in this show for something to happen. I would say around episode 3, that's when you really start to get more clarity as to what's going on. But it's literally the end of episode 3. That's really when you start to realize, what's actually at stake here, what's actually going on within this show. But for me, I really did appreciate that. I love the fact that he really does take that time to get you to care about everyone, to get you to really see their point of views, because it makes it that much more effective when all of this gruesome and intense shit is happening to them. And I think he does a really great job with that. It's honestly kind of indescribable to talk about how he's able to achieve that balance, how he is able to get you to really latch on to every single character. But he has such a knack for storytelling, and I think that's something that he really does solidify here. It's so well handled. I felt like every conversation that these characters had were so vital. It really is one of those shows where I feel like if you turn away for a second, you miss something really important. And those are the kind of shows that I personally really do love. I love the fact that Flanagan is trying to test your patience, like deliberately doing so. He is trying to get you to really focus on the show. He doesn't want you to turn away for a second. He puts a lot of trust into his viewers, and that's something I've always adored about him, as a writer, is that, a lot of horror, and I think the other big thing is, like, a lot of horror directors, they want to get to stuff immediately. They're so worried about, like, low attention spans. Mike Flanagan is not about that. He's like, let me just write this, like, 7-minute monologue about just something simple that happened to a character, and it doesn't seem like it's of major consequence. But as it goes on, you start to realize, holy shit, wait, no, this connects to this, and this connects to this, and this is why this is going on. And I think that's something he does really well. Similar to Bly Manor and Hill House, he does plant little seeds throughout the episodes. But what I think makes this show even more brilliant is that they're a lot more subtle this time around. There's a lot of things you're going to notice in these first 2 episodes, and you're like, why does this matter? Why are we focusing on this? What is the point of what's going on here? And then as you start to get further into the show, you're like, oh, that's what's going on. That's why we focus so much on this specific detail. That's why this is happening. So I think he did a really great job with that. But also, the character of Father Paul, as I said, is someone that is very challenging to write. You really understand who he is in this show, what his true purpose is. Why is he doing the things that he's doing? What's his true purpose? Again, you got to give it a little bit to really get you to understand where he's coming from, but he's always an intriguing character, and I think he does a great job with that. Every single character in this show is so exquisitely written. I don't think there was a single character that was off their mark here, whether it's our main character, Riley, who, like I said, is like the social pariah of Crockett Island. No one believes anything that he's doing. No one really trusts him. Most people don't really want much to do with him. They don't really want him around. And because of that, he kind of has lost touch with his faith. He's not in a great spot in his life, and he has this really emotional monologue about what he's dealing with. Or you have the character of Erin Green, this mother-to-be who's gone through a pretty abusive relationship within her life. And, you kind of see the effect that that's had on her, and her trying to connect with Riley since they were once high school sweethearts. So you're really latched onto that character. Or my personal favorite character, Sheriff Hazan, who I was not expecting throughout the first half of the show to be my favorite character. But he has a monologue in episode 7, and it might just be the most emotional monologue of the entire show. Without spoiling anything, his character, unlike everyone else, isn't Christian. He's Muslim, and because of that, he's kind of frowned upon for it. People don't think very fondly of this guy, especially Bev Keane. We'll get into her in a little bit, but people don't really think very fondly of him, and you kind of see how he's struggling in that, because his son, on the other hand, is very devoted to Christianity, and he wants his son to, he's struggling to really connect with him over that, and I think the show presents that whole storyline very well. Or Dr. Sarah Gunning, this town's local doctor who has a mother that is sick, and she's trying to do what she can to care for her and things like that. So you really find yourself connected to her character. Every single character here, you really do find yourself latching onto in some way. Even the nastiest of characters, like Bev Keane, for example, you still find yourself really latching onto her. This is someone that is so delusional in every single thing that she does. There are so many disgusting acts throughout this show, and the way that she will continually rationalize it and act like it's just a normal thing and act so nonchalantly about it. That's what makes you so intrigued to her character. You're so infuriated, but you're just as intrigued. And again, I don't know how he's able to do it, but even her character, I was like, I want to know more about her. What makes her tick? What makes her this way? And we do very much get that answer in this show, and I think that's something that Flanagan is just such an amazing job with. So all around, I think he does such an amazing job when it comes down to all of these characters, when it comes to getting you to really relate to them. But then, like I said, the payoff in this show is incredible. Where they end up going with all of this, what the story really ends up being, that I cannot really tell you. I can't even really tell you what this show is really about, just because of how much I gotta tiptoe around things in this show. What I can say is that what he's really trying to go for here, and what I think the ultimate message of the show is, it's about a couple things. I think the big thing is that it's really about, have a belief system, but don't completely latch on, but don't completely buy into everything that you're being told. Question things. Don't just blindly follow other people. I think the show really is trying to talk about how susceptible we are to, being fooled into doing something, how often we are gullible in that way. We are doing something that doesn't really make a lot of sense, isn't exactly the most ethical thing to do, but because we're told to do it, we just kind of go along with it. And, I've seen it happen. I've seen this cult-like mentality in certain things. I'm not a very religious person myself, so I can't really give you a lot of allegories there, but I can talk about how, there have been times where I've been a part of something and I haven't really thought much of it, and then upon reflection, I'm like, why did we do that? That's a big part of what this show is really trying to go for, and I think that's a message that's going to stick out to a lot of people, and I think that Flanagan communicates that in a very interesting way. You don't even realize that's what the show is really about until you get towards the end of it, and I think the way he's able to really deliver that, it's told in a way that you're really not expecting, and I really love the way the show did go about it, and the payoff is just absolutely glorious. I really want to talk more about it, but again, at the risk of spoilers, I will wait until we get to that section. But just all the writing here is so great. The dialogue, characters, everything is so on point. It's easily one of the best teleplays I've seen in any show this year. Very impressed with everything going on here writing-wise. Let's get into the cinematography of the show, because I think the show has a very specific look and feel to it. It's very moody. It's very dimly lit in that way. Crockett Island overall has a very similar sort of color palette to it, and I think he does a really good job with that. But the thing that really impressed me in this show, besides the look and feel of Crockett Island, is that how far he's willing to go. This show is far more graphic than anything else Flanagan has really taken on. The only real thing I can think of that was somewhat a little bit more on this level is, think of the arm scene in Gerald's Game. Yeah, there's stuff on that level here in terms of graphicness. I was honestly shocked with how far this show went in terms of its brutality, how far this show really went in terms of its graphicness, but the show is so much better for it. Mike Flanagan really does commit to creating a certain mood for this show, a certain tone for this show, and once you get to the back half of the show, it just gets wild, and I think he did all of that so well. I love how much he didn't try to, refrain from any of that. And I think what makes it that much more impressive is that the show is actually quite restrained from that, prior. It's a very calm, meditative sort of show. There isn't a lot going on, and I think that's what makes, the outrageousness that much better overall. So I was very impressed by cinematography here. Episode 6 especially goes in this direction that was fucking insane to me. I was not expecting them to go to the places that they did, but it has a scene that you are truly never going to forget, and it is one of the most chilling things I think I have ever seen in a horror show in quite some time. I mean, I was so shocked by where they end up going with it, but it was so much more effective because of it. And I really do applaud Flanagan for going to these directions because it makes the show so much better as a result. Once again, the Noon brothers do such an amazing job of composing the score here. I mean, they are just one of the best composers out there, I think. Every single, project that they get their hands on, usually Mike Flanagan related, it's one that really does stick with me. I constantly find myself, humming the theme, and that's the same with this show. I think that there's certain pieces of music that they compose, it's going to make me think of certain scenes, it's going to make me think of certain instances, and I think they do such a great job when it comes to the music in the show. I was very impressed by it. Again, let's get into the editing. Every episode of the show, almost every episode is over an hour long, and I can see some audiences, losing investment over it, losing any, not having the patience to really go through this show. But for me, I found it that much more impressive that he was able to pull off an episode that's sometimes only 70 minutes long, that sometimes is over, 70 minutes long, and not a lot ends up happening in said episode, but you're so invested in what's going on. You want to know more of what's happening. You are invested in these characters, and once we eventually get to the more crazy stuff, you're that much more caught off guard by it. And I think by having this deliberate slow pace, I think it really did pull off in that way. So I've seen a lot of people complain about, there's too many monologues, there's too much happening here, it's too slow. I think that's the point. I think Flanagan, I've talked about this before, he wants to make you feel comfortable. He wants to get you into this routine when it comes to this show. So eventually when the show goes in a certain direction, the rug is pulled out from under you, you are that much more shocked by it. It is that much more effective, and I think he does such an amazing job with that. So I was very impressed by the editing here, and the way the show wraps up overall, I think was probably one of his best endings yet. I really love what he is ultimately trying to go for in this show, and I'm very excited to talk more about it. With that being said, let's get more into spoilers, because holy shit, as usual, we have a lot to talk about here. There's a lot that goes down on this show, and I honestly don't even know where to start. I think we should just go ahead and talk about the big reveal with Father Paul. So, Father Paul comes in, immediately you can sense there's something off about him. He comes in, he's performing all these weird miracles, like Lisa, who is wheelchair bound, suddenly she's not anymore, she's able to walk all on her own. We have Sarah's mother, who throughout, in the beginning of the show, she's deathly old. She looks like she's on her deathbed pretty much. And then all of a sudden, she starts to gradually age backwards in this show. She starts to get a lot younger. She starts to be able to articulate herself better. She remembers Sarah more. She has very severe dementia in the beginning, and suddenly it just kind of goes away, and you're like, what the hell's going on there? You have Henry Thomas's character who has a really bad back. He can't dance with his wife, and the fact that he's suddenly able to, that's really interesting. His wife doesn't need her glasses anymore. So there's a lot of weird things happening in this show. And then you eventually come to realize that, these miracles are happening, but it's very much with a price, because Father Paul, we think, is getting deathly ill because of it. And I thought what they were eventually going to do is go in this direction where, his body's breaking down because of all these miracles that he's performing, that he's legitimately this miracle worker, but it's not healthy for him. He deteriorates throughout the rest of this show, but that's not really where they end up going with it. Instead, it turns out he made a deal with what he thought was this angel of sorts. It turns out Father Paul is actually, Father Paul is actually Monsignor Pruitt. Monsignor Pruitt was not replaced. Monsignor Pruitt went on this vacation of sorts. During this vacation, he ended up in this cave. He wasn't feeling very well, and basically, he ended up in this sandstorm. He got in this cave, and this winged, blood-sucking creature ended up attacking him, fed him its blood, and now he looks a lot younger. He looks like how Monsignor Pruitt used to look, and because of that, now he is actually a vampire. It turns out that what he thought was this angel is actually this very deadly and just bloodthirsty vampire. And that is such a good idea. And it turns out, what really spawned this idea is Mike Flanagan basically talked about how it's like, oh, well, if we are constantly, drinking the blood and flesh of, someone else, doesn't that make us vampires? And it's like, I didn't really look at it that way. That's something that, when you go to church, you don't really think much of it, but when he brings it up, it's like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And the fact that Father Paul is now putting this blood in, you realize he also is, trying to turn everyone else into, the same way. He doesn't realize that he's doing it. He doesn't realize the true ramifications of what's happening here. He doesn't realize that this is going to turn everyone into these bloodthirsty vampires, but it does confirm pretty early on that he does have good intent. He wants to try to rid the town of its misery. He wants to turn things around, He wants things to go in a smoother direction. He wants everyone to be on the right path. He does a lot of good work in this show. But because he has put his faith into this creature, that's what really leads things down a dark path, and I think that's what is so brilliant when it comes to this show overall, and seeing everyone sort of grapple with that, makes for such a compelling watch, where you have, Riley, for example, who is so vehemently against what he's doing when he gets a hold of it, and you can see that Riley, he's really trying to go on this recovery path. He's trying to turn things around. He's trying to get over the death of this girl that he ended up killing. He's trying to do what he can to do that, and then when he finds out that, he's, when he finds out the sort of stuff that Father Paul is involving himself in, and that he's fraternizing with this creature of sorts, you can see what this really does to Riley. He wants to do what he can to put a stop to this, but it's too late. And the angel, which I love that they always refer to it as the angel. They don't give it a different name. It just makes it that much more effective, I think, that literally everyone is convinced, even if it doesn't make sense, that this is an angel, that this angel's there to save them. This angel's going to turn things around for them. It's just, the naivety that these characters have, it's fucking insane, but it feels like this could actually happen, As fantastical of a situation as this feels realistic. This feels like something people would do. They don't question it because why would they question it? This is their faith. This is what they've been told, It just makes sense, and I think that's what makes this so effective in that way. But anyway, the angel does turn him into a vampire of sorts, and instead of choosing to, become this bloodthirsty creature, when Riley starts to realize, what he really is going to need to do, he actually decides to sacrifice himself. And the fact that they killed our main character, seemingly main character, off in 2 episodes before the show ends, I thought was such a bold decision. This was one of the things where I was like, whoa. So there's no way, they just killed him. Even when Aaron was screaming and crying, I still was convinced that somehow Riley was going to be brought back, because I think it's because Flanagan has sort of developed this tendency where, any character that dies sort of comes back as a ghost. He's been doing that in his past 2 shows. But by killing off Riley, this sets a precedent where that's not going to happen in this show. Characters, when they die, they're dead. They're not coming back. And I really liked that he ended up doing that here. I thought it made it so much more effective that they ended up killing Riley. And this really fuels Aaron's desire to put a stop to this. And Aaron, I mean, talk about a character that is just put through the absolute ringer in this show. I mean, not only did she have this abusive relationship that we only hear about, we don't actually see it play out, thank God, but like we only hear, you know, the brutal details of it, but you can see wanting to use this baby as a way to turn things around, as to get her life back on track, and instead, the baby just disappears one day. It's not even a miscarriage. The baby just disappears. It's almost like she was never pregnant at all. And so you can see how alarming that is to her, but the thing that really kept her guarded was Riley. Riley was the person that was keeping her sane. Riley was the person that she felt was gonna turn things around for. She always had something to latch onto, and I think that's what makes Erin such a rootable character, is that she has convinced herself that there's something in her life that's going to turn things around, and the second that Riley dies, that's when she knows there really is nothing she can do. She needs to put a stop to this, and I really love the way the remaining episodes do play out from here. But I also really love what they do with the character of Joe Kohli, because constantly throughout this show, there are moments where you think characters are going to be on a good are going to end up in a good place in their life. And Joe Kohli's one of those people where, yeah, he's done a lot of really terrible shit in his life, but he goes to therapy. He actually starts to feel better. He doesn't want to drink anymore. Lisa ends up forgiving him. He's ready to move forward. And right when we think he's in a good place, that's when he dies. And the same thing happens to Riley, and I thought it was very effective storytelling because we really do see these characters at a height in their life. And again, that's kind of what I was talking about with Flanagan wanting you to feel comfortable, making you think that Riley is our main character. No way they're going to kill Riley. And then they do anyway. I thought was just such a brilliant move. And where we go from there is just absolute chaos. I mean, when Aaron is talking to Sarah, first of all, I love that Sarah just flat out believes her. You know, it isn't one of those things where Sarah's like, you don't know what you're talking about, you're overreacting. Like, that's a very, like, tired trope, and so I was happy that Sarah believed into everything that, Aaron was telling her, so I like that they ended up banding together. But then when we get to this whole thing where, Sarah wants Sheriff Hazan to basically investigate what's going on, to try to put a stop to everything, to go after the rec center and whatnot. And he gives this really, like, passionate monologue, and it became maybe my favorite scene of the entire show besides the end of this episode, where he basically talks about how he wasn't taken seriously. He was a very devoted Christian, that mattered a lot to him. But the second that he became this cop of sorts, everyone was looking at him weirdly because of 9/11, because he was Muslim. And he always felt like, he couldn't really do anything. He doesn't even carry a gun because of that. He isn't someone that's willing to investigate because of the fact that he knows, people already are scrutinizing him. People don't trust him. People don't look at him in a good light. And it just made me really love this character. This is a guy that, is so vulnerable in his position, but yet he continues to do his position because it's what he loves doing. Even though you have someone like Bev Keane, who is constantly making all of these microaggressions towards him, constantly making him out to be this terrorist of sorts, and is saying that he's the problem with everything and is trying to just extract of him entirely, he still goes about what he's doing. And I found that to be very noble for his character, especially in the moment where, all that chaos goes down when it comes to the blood, when Father Paul does eventually confess to what he's doing, and that he lied to them, and he kind of spins it as like, this blood is going to save you if you drink it now. All of the cups are in fact poisoned, and in the heat of all that chaos, Hazan actually pulls out a gun, and it's to save his son, because he doesn't want his son to go down this dark path. He wants his son to turn out to be better than he was. He wants his son to have a good life. He wants his son to make good choices. And I just found that character to be so just, again, someone that you really do find yourself latching onto. He kind of did become the heart and soul of the show for me, and I think he kind of became my favorite character by the end of it. So I really loved what they end up doing there. But let's get more into that church scene, man, because, oh my god, it is one of the craziest things I have seen in a very long time when and all of them are just reacting immediately. You can see they come back to life. Something isn't right. They want to feed on each other. We see that Bev doesn't listen to Father Paul. She keeps the doors closed. It gets all of them to just feed on one another. It's absolute chaos. Aaron, almost everyone ends up drinking. And I knew it was going to be crazy in the finale when this happened. I was not expecting it to go to this level, where almost every single character, every resident of Crockett Island ends up taking this poison. Even like Lisa's parents, they end up taking it. We see that, a couple other characters end up doing it. Mildred, Sarah's mother, is taken away by the angels, so we don't know what's going to happen to her. There's a couple other characters end up doing it, and of course the biggest one of all is Sheriff Hassan's son. He does end up consuming this poison. When he makes that choice, he's like, I choose God. It's devastating to watch, because you know what this is going to do to him. You know the effect that this will have on him as a character, and just seeing all that mayhem break out, it's like the craziest thing I think Flanagan has ever done. He's not usually known for like these big, like crazy action set pieces, but the fact that he really did go for it here, I was so impressed by the way this whole thing played out. I was also in such disbelief that it played out in this way. It is truly one of the most manic things I've seen in a show in a very long time, and I really love the way that it ended up all playing out here. And it felt so rewarding as well. Like, it feels like, yeah, this is a good direction to go, and this makes sense that this character is going to end up in just total anarchy, because again, they just bought into everything. They never hesitated for a second. They just questioned everything. They just kind of bought everything that Father Paul was selling. Even when he's confessing to lying to them, they still do go along with it. And a big reason for that is because of Bev Keane, who is constantly, again, rationalizing every single thing. I was shocked by some of the things that she was okay with. When Joe Kohli is merged, she's like, oh, well, God kills those that are bad. We gotta, keep out the weak from the strong, in a sense. It's like a sort of like survival of the fitness thing to her. You can really see how little remorse she has for anyone. She is so devoted to her cause that she is willing to put literally anyone at risk just to continue preaching her good word and feigning it as her being in the right. And that's what really makes that character so horrible. That's what makes this character probably the most vile character Mike Flanagan has ever written. I really loved the way that they went about that Bev Keane is someone that just has no remorse whatsoever. There isn't a single thing she does throughout this entire show that she regrets doing, and I think it made her that much better of a character as a result. But getting into this finale, I've seen a lot of people complain about that. Well, not a lot of people, but I've seen some people complain about this. I actually like the fact that this finale doesn't really have a main focus. We really focus on just the entire town and just the utter chaos that breaks out. So many of these characters, feeling vulnerable, feeling like they don't really have a lot they can do here. At first it seems like maybe Lisa and like Aaron and Sarah, they're all gonna make it out of this. But then we see that Riley's mother, Annie, she's the one to confront Bev Keane, and she tells her right off the bat, like, you're not a good person, and you need to stop telling yourself that you're a good person. And not only does she do that, she slits her throat, and she makes it so she doesn't necessarily, she slits her throat, she wants to show her what's going to happen to her, but she also doesn't react in the way other characters do. She knows what this is going to do to her. She doesn't want to go in that direction. And I thought that was really great to see when she's reunited with Henry Thomas's character. I really enjoyed those two a lot. And that's a perfect example of characters that aren't the main focus, but that you completely understand and buy into their relationship. Annie and Ed are not huge characters in this show, but you understand every single thing that they're doing. You understand how their son's, death, it's really broken them, even though they don't want to believe their son is dead. They want to believe he's still out there somewhere. They want to believe, Ed especially didn't want to believe that his son died. He wanted to believe that his son was getting better. In fact, when he disappears, he's like lashing out at his son. It's a heartbreaking moment. But when you eventually realize, that they have this, what looks like a suicide note of sorts, this really does get get to them. I love that the thing that they had for each other in the end was their love, and I think that's what makes that so powerful in that way. But I also love getting to see all these other characters and them kind of coming to the realization of like, wow, I just killed my wife, I just killed my mother, I just killed some sort of loved one. It makes it that much more effective in that moment where they don't come to that realization until after they've committed the act, until after they've feasted on someone that meant a lot to them. I really love the way that played out, and them slowly turning on Bev to the point where she's all alone in the end. This even Father Paul ends up turning on her, and I also love the revelation that not only do we find out that Monsignor Pruitt's wife, secret lover, actually turns out to be Mildred, but he actually is Sarah's father. And I thought that was such a good moment. Obviously it came pretty quickly, but it made a lot of sense. Why was he so adamant about protecting her? Why was he so devoted to make sure that her mother didn't die in that way? It turns out every single thing that he did, he wanted to do as a way to help them, as a way to turn their family around, as a way to turn Sarah's life around. He wanted to make sure that she wasn't the one in danger, and this adds so many more layers to his character. It makes me really want to go back and watch through all of Monsignor Pruitt's scenes and really dissect okay, this was his actual cause. This is why he made that choice. This is why he talked to her in that way. So many scenes between him and Sarah you look at differently, and it's the perfect kind of thing that just recontextualizes every single thing that we've seen moving forward. And I think that's something that Flanagan just does such a great job with. He does these twists that at first are kind of what the hell, but you start to put it together, it makes a lot of sense. And this is definitely, one of many for me. I love the direction they go with it. I also love that Sarah is shot and coughs up the blood. When he's trying to feed her the blood so she'll come back to life, she coughs it up. She doesn't care. She doesn't want to go in that direction. She doesn't want to, think that little of herself. She's she knows that she's above that. She's not going to, tarnish her appearance. She wants to die a noble death. And I thought that was such the perfect way to send her off, for her to be the one to say, no, I'm resisting. I'm not going to confine to the needs of everyone. I'm not going to conform to that. I think better of myself than that. I'm not going to, turn into this monster of sorts. That's not what I want to do. I thought it was such a great moment for her, the way they wrapped that up. And then Erin's death as well, I thought was pretty much perfect, the way that it was handled with her. Basically, yes, she does get fed on by the angel. The angel does end up killing her, but not before she cuts off its wings. I thought was such a great moment, with the angel losing their wings. And then you have, Lisa and Riley's brother, and basically, them coming to the realization that the angel's probably not going to make it out of this because they can't fly all that far. I thought was such a great moment, the way that ended up playing out. Where, she cuts off their wings and she has that great monologue with Riley where it's and it's something, again, you don't think about, that death isn't individual. It's everyone around you. It affects everyone around you. I thought that was such a great monologue. I honestly was crying in that moment. It was so beautifully handled, the way that was done. And then, I think everyone really had the best death possible. Sheriff Hazan with his son, and his son ultimately making the choice to burn the rec center because Bev and Sturge were literally just burning everything. They just wanted to burn it to the ground and start over, which, again, Bev's logic there was completely ridiculous. The fact where she's like, oh, well, we'll just burn it all and we'll start over from there. We'll survive because we're pure, we're noble. It just was never gonna work. And I love that she ends up dying alone. Everyone dies with someone by their side, but she's the one that ends up dying alone. It just was such an effective moment in that way. And I love that in the end, the only characters to live are the younger ones, sort of the future generation of Crockett Island, something that they're never going to forget, but they are going to be able to move forward from it. They're the only characters that are going to be able to move forward. It's just such a perfect moment where Lisa realizes that she's not going to be able to walk again, but that she's actually happy about it. You know, she likes the fact that things are getting back to normal. She wants to venture away from Crockett Island. It's such a great moment. Obviously, there's a lot of trauma those characters have been through, but I like that in the end, you know, they're going to be able to escape. They're going to be able to venture elsewhere. They get to finally say no. They don't have to conform to the ways of Crockett Island anymore, because Crockett Island is pretty much gone. It's just such a great moment, the way all of that end up playing out. I really think it was the most hopeful but also bittersweet note possible, and I think that's something that Flanagan did really well. Is like, yeah, all this is very emotional, but there's something really hopeful about the way it all wraps up, and I think that's something that only he could really achieve. So I really do think they ended this finale on the best note possible. Overall, guys, Midnight Mass blew me away in so many more ways than I really could have imagined. It is an emotional series, but it's also very horrifying to watch. It dives a lot deeper into its horror roots, but it also tells a story that is really unlike no other in terms of religion, what it has to say about religious freedom, but also buying into cult-like mentality. I think it does such an amazing job with that. All the performances here are top tier, but Hamish, Linklater, Samantha, Sloyan, and Rahul Kohli are really, I think, the big standouts throughout this entire series. It's got amazing direction from Mike Flanagan, which feels like his most passionate yet. This feels like the project he's wanted to make for years, and he finally does get to, with top-notch writing, amazing writing that consists of a lot of monologues, but all of which are very meaningful and really do tie into things very nicely, and one of the most savage and brutal payoffs that Flanagan has ever constructed. I think he's proven before how talented of a creator he is, how talented of a writer he is, but Midnight Mass proves that Mike Flanagan is really, I think, the biggest asset to Netflix. It's amazing that he's gotten the deal that he has, and no matter what he does moving forward, I don't care what the hell it is, I will be there day one to see whatever else he ends up churning out. He is truly such a genius storyteller, and I cannot wait to see what else he ends up doing next. This is a stunning work of art that is truly unlike many horror projects out there. It strikes the perfect balance between this really heavy emotion, but also this really horrifying nature. He does such a great job at striking that balance, but also telling this really important and emotional story that I'm very excited for people to see play out. It might lose some viewers because of its slower pacing, but I think it makes it that much better overall, especially once you get to the later half. This is without a doubt the best show I have seen in 2021 so far, and I'm absolutely going to give Midnight Mass overall an A+. Oh my god, I am so happy that I ended up finally finishing this show and I can finally talk to you guys about it, but this happens to me every single time when I finish a Mike Flanagan show. I wish I had more time. I wish I was able to watch it again. I might end up watching this one again just because like there's so much more to dissect once you're done with it all. So I cannot wait to see what else he does end up doing next. I cannot recommend this show enough to all of you. But that's really it for this review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I have a lot more things to catch up on, but I will definitely try to get to them very soon. That's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.